Okay, so I did my unit lesson plan on Japan, and I decided to do geography, natural resources, holidays and festivals, and then family life and the arts of Japan as my uh, 5 days of covering the subject. It would go from geography to natural resources, and then family, holidays, and art. I feel like that sort of has a natural flow to it. So, starting off with geography, Japan is located off the coast of Asia. It is an Asian country and is in the Pacific Ocean. It's also made up of 4 islands. I know on a map it looks like it's just one giant connected sort of J shape, but the islands are Honshu, Hokkaido, Shikoku, and Kyushu. Uh, the Kanto Plain is the flattest area in Japan. Um, a lot of it's usually mountains or kind of rough, gravelly area. So in the Kanto region, um, there's a lot of cities built there. It's sturdy land, and that's where Japan's capital is, Tokyo. Um, Mount Fuji is one of the biggest icons of Japan. It's the tallest mountain in Japan, and it's sort of revered to be sort of sacred. And uh, it gets really beautiful in the spring and summer because it's just topped, completely capped with snow, and it looks gorgeous. The climate in Japan is interestingly similar to the sort of Midwest stretch from like Illinois to Florida. They referenced in one of my handy Japan books that in the winter in where is it, in Sapporo, which is in the northern region in Hokkaido, uh, that winter is usually somewhere around 23 degrees Fahrenheit. So I feel like we can all relate to what that horribleness feels like. But then the winter in Okinawa, which is the furthest south point of Japan, it's sort of the islands at the bottom, that is somewhere around 59 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's like a Floridian winter. Um, and the most iconic animal of Japan is the snow monkey or the Japanese macaque. And I'm going to pull up a picture here. I want to pass this around. I feel like we all have a general understanding of what the macaque looks like. These monkeys can survive in the cold snow because there are many hot springs in Japan. It's very volcanic because it's 4 islands. Um, and actually, Mount Fuji is a dormant volcano. It's been dormant since the 1600s. But these monkeys survive basically by bathing in hot springs and just sort of hanging out. It's pretty cool. Okay, natural resources. Japan does not have a lot of natural resources, but it does have a lot of metals. They said that Japan has gold, copper, coal, lead, and zinc. And so I think they get a lot of their manufacturing, why they produce a lot of cars, because they have a lot of metal resources handy to them. Japan also does a decent amount of farming on the flatlands and countryside of Japan, and they actually adopted the farming style of growing rice through wet paddies. Let's see if I remember which book that's in. But the wet paddy method of growing rice was actually a Chinese method that they adopted in 300 BC. And I thought that was particularly interesting because Japan and China do not have a very good relationship with each other. If you can see here, I'll pass this around just so you can take a look at what the patties look like. Because I think that they actually kind of look artistic in a way. They're very, beautifully put together. So it's just another interesting way. Rice is incredibly important to the culture of Japan. At one point in their early history, the Japanese used rice as a symbol of wealth. And that reminded me of one of the fables of a peasant coming to a king. And he says, the king says to this poor peasant that, all right, I'll give you rice and I'll double it up on a checkerboard for every time. So the first space gets 1 grain of rice, second space gets 2, third space gets 4, and so on and so on. And by the end, there was so much rice that he had rice for his family for like years. So interesting mathematical problem. It shows the value of rice in Japan, and it's just a really interesting story. Let's see, family life. Family life in Japan is very respectful. They very often have their grandparents living in the home. They take care of each other like that. It's very reciprocal. And the Japanese family is typically pretty small. Japan has sort of an overcrowding problem because it's such a small place in general. And what they say is that a lot of the homes in the cities are high-rise apartments, and they're very small, like a living room, a kitchen, and bedrooms, basically. Because Japan doesn't have a lot of space for all that. And the cities, like I said, they're all in the one Kanto region, and that's the flattest area. So that's where the majority of the people live, and that's why they have to live in high-rise buildings with small rooms. On the countryside, however, the people who are farmers get it, I don't know about easier, but their homes are a lot bigger, and the way they're designed is not like our homes would be, where each room is sort of divided up. It's almost like it's one big space, and then they will split it with paper walls. I think we've all seen that, like the bamboo paper where it's like kind of see-through but still sturdy. So they'll split it with paper walls and sliding paper doorways just to give a sense of division from room to room. The holidays in Japan. This is pretty interesting. The number one holiday in Japan is New Year's Day, which is celebrated in January, like our New Year's Day is celebrated. It's different from the Chinese New Year, which is somewhere around the middle of the year. And then I thought this was really cool, and since this is for children, our lesson plan, the boys and girls each get their own holiday in Japan, like not individually, but boys have a holiday and girls have a holiday. The girls' holiday is called the Festival of Dolls, and that's celebrated on March 3rd. And the boys' holiday is Children's Day on May 5th. And I have an activity for us where we will be designing our own koi fish kites. It has little hole punches in the front and the nose, so you could put streamers in it and like hang it around to decorate your classroom. But what they do is they decorate a family decorates one kite for each boy in the family, and then they all go out and they fly it. It's like this huge, beautiful display of kites. I'll pull up another picture from one of my books, but I'm going to pass these out really quick. If you wouldn't mind passing those down, Jenny. Let's see. It was in here, I believe, and I want to show you a picture of it because it's very cool. Here we go. Yeah, Children's Day on page 39. You can see all the different kites that go up. I'm going to pass this around too. Get a look for the video. But so many different kites go up on the same day in the same area, and it looks amazing. Festivals. There is the Gion Matsuri, which is celebrated on July 17th. And it was originally celebrated to ask the gods for protection from plagues and diseases. And now it's just a tradition in Japanese culture. And then the Bon Festival is where people believe that ghosts and spirits come back to Earth. And the people of Japan will bring candles. Usually the candles in like a paper bag or like a bamboo bag. And they'll write a note on it, like for a special spirit, somebody who's passed away in their life. And they will float it down the river to guide the spirit back to heaven or hell or wherever it is that they are now residing. And so another activity of mine, when you finish later on in the presentation, I'll start passing these out down here. I have candles for us all. We can write a special note. And then in my little river down here, we can all float our candles down our river and guide our loving spirits back to where they belong. let's see, where do I want to start with next? So, okay, in art, this is going to be fun. Art in Japan is very, very different from Western art. I started off with the very basic traditional art forms. There's what a skilled craftsman is called. Japan has very high respect for a person in their own position. Like a teacher gets very high respect. They get called sensei. A doctor is sensei, lawyers are sensei, but anyone who's in a particular field is considered a specialist and that they know what they're doing. So anyone else doesn't give them suggestions. I remember watching a video in one of my Japanese classes at Illinois Wesleyan where this boy who's kind of a dorky kid, he's trying to become cooler, and so he goes to a hairstylist, and he basically just says whatever you think is appropriate, because again, there's that respect for they know what they're doing. I'm just here to, embrace that, I suppose. So the craftsmen are called living national treasures. That should give you an idea of how important these people are to Japan. They are the ones that carry down the tradition of the pure art forms. Calligraphy being one of those art forms is the art of painting Japanese characters very beautifully onto paper, and they actually start teaching calligraphy to children in elementary school. So if I had a little more skill in calligraphy, I would present at least a few options for my children in my future classroom to at least try their hand at it, like maybe find outlines of the characters and then they could fill them in by painting them in like that. Another classic art form in Japan is called print art, and it's where the Japanese will take wood blocks and they'll carve them into intricate shapes, and then they'll take those shapes and they'll press them into different paint and then press it onto paper to create beautiful and very intricate artwork like that. There are also 3 types of theater in Japan. It's called the No, Bunraku, and Kabuki. And I actually have a Kabuki mask that I painted myself. Wes, if you wouldn't mind handing me the white plastic bag over there. Yeah. So I found this mask at Hobby Lobby, and I was like, oh, this is absolutely perfect. So I looked up a picture, and this is what a Kabuki mask would typically look like. I mean, they paint it differently, but all kinds of different decorations. And they use these masks, and I'm going to put it on just because I can. They use these masks to tell stories in the theater like that. And then they'll also use puppets as well to tell the stories along with the actors acting it out. So the Kabuki mask is something that's very interesting, very unique to Asian and Japanese culture. I'm just going to hand this right here. And I also brought a worksheet for you to color in, as you wish, your own Kabuki mask. So, if you want to pass those out, thank you. I also have markers if people don't have coloring supplies, so I'm just going to put those right here in the middle for you guys to use. And then my favorite art form of Japan is the manga, which is the Western version or the Eastern version of comic books or superheroes. And so I wore what I'm wearing today in particular just for this occasion. This hoodie has the angel wings on the back for the Rangers in Attack on Titan. And that's an anime that just recently came out. And then I also wore my Batman t-shirt because of the Western culture for comic books. And there's a big difference between the two. In Japanese manga, the characters, the main protagonist is usually a young kid between the ages of like 10 and 14. Like in Pokemon, I assume most of us have played or heard of or seen episodes of Pokemon when we were kids. Ash Ketchum is what, like 12 when he goes off to meet Pikachu and then destroy everyone with his amazingness at raising Pokemon. So that's one of the main tropes of Japanese manga, and I'm going to pass this around just so you can see the artwork and the panel work in it. And also what's interesting is it reads from left to right, so you open it from the left and it goes like that, which is a little confusing to start, but you get used to it. I'm going to start this down here by Isabel, and I'll pass around the different manga that I brought. I did find this manga. It's called Yatsubata, and it is a manga about this little girl, Yatsubata. It's all about her experiences. This one is about her moving to a new place and starting off at a new school. And it's very easy to digest. The artwork is still very much as you would expect in anime, with the typical like goofy faces of like shock and anger and happiness and all that. And I just think it's very appropriate for kids. It's long, but again, it's a manga, so you can take your time on it. It's mostly pictures with word bubbles, and it applies specifically to children in elementary school age. I'll start this one down here so you guys can take a look at that. And the last manga that I brought, but not the last anime I'm going to talk about because I could go on, is I was lucky enough to find a copy of the manga Spirited Away. And Spirited Away is a now very well-known film by Miyazaki, and it is probably one of the best movies I've ever seen, and definitely one of the best animes I've ever seen. And this book is basically clipped versions of the movie with the different dialogue and all that, and so it's really just fun to look at. The visuals in it, the art in it are spectacular, and I will start this one with Brittany. So there are other typical tropes that you get in an anime, along with the kid being, or the protagonist being usually a child, both male or female. What identifies a character could be their hair color. Red hair is a particularly rare hair color for Asians and Japanese people, and so when a character has red hair, like in Bleach, the main character has red hair, that's a significant identifier that he's special, or something about him is going to be incredibly unique. Another particular trope about manga is that, or anime, is that these people have extraordinary ability beyond any of which humans could possibly do. Like in Naruto, they start off again as young ninjas learning the way of becoming, what do they call it, Shunin, and these kids can take a beating like nobody's business. There's no way these kids could be alive, but it's the idea of power, being empowered, being young and feeling that strength, like being able to relate to that, feeling like you can overcome these kinds of challenges because there are these characters beyond strength that are there for you to emulate. And that, along with ours, sort of like the Batman here I'm wearing, is sort of the same purpose. It serves the idea of we want to idealize somebody that is beyond our strength but is serving a greater good. So the difference is that in Western culture, a lot of the protagonists are adults in their 20s or 30s or beyond. There are very few that I could think of off the top of my head that are teenagers, Spider-Man being one of them, and then a few of the X-Men being other teenagers. But again, the X-Men is scattered all about for ages. Let's see, I would now like to read, I have this one book that I found. It's called Bokuden and the Bully, and I thought this was perfect for elementary school kids, all about how you handle a difficult situation with somebody who keeps pushing people around. And I'm just going to read to you and I'll show you the pictures. It's not too long. So it says, Boarding the Ferry. Tsukahara Bokuden was a great nobleman. He was an even better swordsman, and he was also curious about the world. Many times, Bokuden left his home to travel. He always wore simple clothes to fit in with his fellow travelers, but he also carried his sword, because some places were dangerous for a man traveling alone. From new people and places, and Bokudin was eager to learn. From new people to places, Bokudin was able to learn. On one such trip, he came to a great river. At the river's edge was a ferry. It went back and forth, carrying passengers across the water. People were standing to buy tickets. Bokudin waited his turn like everyone else. Well, almost everyone. A fierce warrior was trying to push his way to the front. He was a head taller than everyone else and a head wider. "Move aside," the warrior said. He grabbed a peasant by the shoulders. "You're standing in my spot." The peasant was surprised at the warrior's manner. "This is not your spot," he said. "You've only just arrived." "Exactly," said the warrior, "and now that I'm here, I wish to stand where you are." "That's not fair," said the peasant. "I've waited here for an hour, and you're a soldier. Should you not defend the law?" "The law here is what I make it," said the warrior. "As you say, I am a soldier. Do you see the sword I'm wearing? Do you think I know how to use it? I will be happy to demonstrate on you." The peasant bowed deeply. He could see that the warrior was not listening to him. "I am unarmed, and I spoke without thinking. Forgive me. Please take my space." "That's better," said the warrior. "And since you are so proud of standing in line, why don't you go to the end and do it again?" The peasant, seeing no other choice, did as he was told. And there he is bowing to the warrior who's being a bully. Crossing the river. Once the tickets were sold, the passengers boarded the ferry for the trip over the water. The day was bright, and Bokudin hoped to enjoy the fine weather. He took a seat and closed his eyes. And there's Bokudin sitting in the back, just relaxing, and the warrior standing very proudly, sort of trying to dominate over everyone. Not far away, the fierce warrior strutted around the deck. "Move," he said to a farmer nearby. "But I was here first," the farmer replied. "Why does that matter?" asked the warrior. "This is where I wish to enjoy the view." "Do you see the sword I'm wearing? Do you think I know how to use it?" The farmer bowed deeply. "I have no wish to fight over the view. I will find another place." And he scampered away. He's being bullied again. A merchant in fine clothes shook his head. "That was not right," he said. The warrior turned on him. "Do you wish to make it right?" No, I wish not," said the merchant, turning pale. "I am not dressed for that part." I can carve you up into little pieces," said the warrior. "It will not matter how you are dressed." The merchant gripped his soft shirt tightly. "Forgive me," he said. "I regret my words." "If I were to cut your tongue," said the warrior, "you would never have to worry about that again." The merchant scuttled off as fast as he could. "All of you are like frightened little chickens," the warrior announced. "You should crawl back to your nice, safe eggs." The other passengers began to move away from the warrior. Soon only Bokudin remained. His eyes stayed closed, and he was very still. The warrior took out his sword and waved it through the air. He sliced up and down, left and right. He jabbed and parried. "Why are you all staring?" he asked. "Does anyone else wish to say something?" The two children raised their hands. "Yes, what is it?" the warrior asked. "Have you fought in many battles?" asked the one child. The warrior nodded. "Too many to count." "Have you ever been wounded?" asked the other child. "I give wounds. I do not receive them." Someone snorted. The warrior snapped around. "Who was that?" he demanded. No one spoke. A different art. The warrior was not satisfied with the silence. "I will discover who has mocked me. Whoever it was will pay for his opinion." Someone snorted again. This time the warrior walked up to Bokudin. He stared down at the nobleman. "You there," the warrior declared. Bokudin's eyes were still closed. "I'm talking to you," said the warrior. He poked the nobleman in the shoulder. Bokuden opened his eyes. I was having the most delightful dream, he said. Don't suppose you can tell me how it ends? The warrior laughed harshly. Ha 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 ha! I don't suppose I care. You seem to have more backbone than the rest of these worms. What do you have to say about my sword skills? My apologies, said Bokuden. Did you put on a show? I was not really paying attention. Pay attention now, said the warrior, and he repeated his best move. Then he was finished. He turned to Bokuden. What do you think of that? He asked. Very lively, said Bokuden. Lively, cried the warrior. Why, not one swordsman in 100 can claim such a skill. Bokuden looked around. Since 100 swordsmen are not here, I will have to take your word for that. The warrior pointed at Bokuden. But you are also a swordsman, or is the sword you carry only for decoration? Bokuden eyed him steadily. I practice a different art form from your own. My goal is not to defeat others, but to keep from being defeated myself. It is a kind of sword fighting without swords. The warrior laughed. I've never heard of such a thing. Has this art ever served you well? Bokuden opened his arms wide. So far it has. The warrior laughed again. I would like to see the sword fighting without swords. Very well, said Bokuden, very graciously offering up. Bokuden looked around. Here on the ferry there's not enough room for a proper contest. Let us take one of the rowboats to that island. He pointed over the bow. There we will have enough space to move around. The warrior agreed. As the crowd gathered to watch, Bokuden and the warrior rowed away together, fighting with one sword. Bokuden and the warrior reached the island. Then the warrior jumped out of the boat onto the shore. He could not wait for the contest to begin. Right away, he began waving his sword. The blade flashed in the sunlight on board the ferry. The passengers were amazed. The warrior was truly a fierce fighter. His sword flashed like lightning. What chance did the quiet stranger have against him? The warrior was thinking the same thing, but he had failed to notice something. Bokuden had not followed him onto the shore. He was still sitting in the boat. Hurry up, the warrior demanded. I do not expect this to take long. I cannot promise to be merciful, but it will be quick. In answer, Bokuden put his oar back in the water. Where are you going? The warrior shouted. Back to the ferry, Bokuden answered. The warrior laughed harshly. But we have not fought yet. Are you really such a coward? Tuskahara Bokuden is many things, said Bokuden. Perhaps not all of them are worthy of praise, but never has he been called a coward. Look at that face. I wouldn't mess with Bokuden right there. The crowd aboard the ferry gasped. Tuskahara Bokuden was the greatest swordsman in all of Japan. If he would not fight this boastful warrior, it could only be to save the poor man's life. This was what's called sword fighting without swords, Bokuden went on. And unless you are a great swimmer, as you are a warrior, we are done with your first lesson. Leaving the warrior shaking his fist, Bokuden rode away. The end. And it says afterward that this is actually based on a real tale of a swordsman named Tuskahara Bokuden, and it has a basic glossary at the back for children who might not understand terminology such as, what a bow is, or what a nobleman is, or what parry is, which means to block. So this is a very appropriate book for children, and there's actually an anime that I just finished called Rurouni Kenshin, who practices that exact same art form with what he calls a reverse blade sword. I also brought a few other books, but I won't read through them all just for time's sake. But I want to pass this around because the artwork in this book is amazing. It's called Wabi Sabi, and it's about a cat who's trying to find what he's called and find the purpose of his name. and it kind of reminds me of an Eric Carle book in how all the pieces are sort of put together and how the paint is used. So I'll pass that around just for everyone to take a look at. I also brought some. I also brought sushi, and if you like sushi, I hope you all do, then you may come up and have a bite or two. I'll make some room on this table. And I got soy sauce and chopsticks for everyone. So please feel free to come up and have a bite. I know that if it's not gone, I'm going to devour all of this myself. So please prevent me from doing that. And I'm going to pour the soy sauce for you guys later. Oh boy. And then there's more soy sauce in here for later. Chopsticks for you. Chopsticks for you. Sorry I didn't grab plates. I was in haste. So sushi is a very typical meal in Japan. It is based on what's it called? Shimishi, which is a art basically in and of its own, where the chef will cut the fish in such a way that it actually accentuates the flavor of the fish, but it's an incredibly expensive dish. So sushi combines sort of all the aspects of what Japanese would like to eat. It's rice, seaweed, fish of all types, and then lots of soy sauce, and sometimes topped with ginger or horseradish. And I'm totally going to grab a bite of the crunchy roll.
Is it okay if I just take one of these soy sauces?
Yeah.
Is it? What kind is it?
I don't know.
There's crab in here.
Is it imitation crab?
I have no idea.
I'll just go.
Oh,
Is,
sorry. Because most ones that are like this use a bit range. Yeah.
Invitation? So you can have it?
Mm-hmm.
Hooray!
Woo!
Oh man, that's really good.
no, that was so close. Sorry. Put it in square.
It's
There's
just
your
me.
videos on it. I'm just gonna take that.
You almost.
Where are the napkins?
Over here by Sarah.
Mm.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kyle.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that was good.
Mm-hmm.
Is there enough for us to have one of each?
Yeah.
I took two of the avocado ones. This one, I didn't look at this one.
That's the dragon roll.
Oh my
I
god.
got one dragon roll and one crunchy roll.
It'd be fun for you guys if I had an allergic reaction with it.
No.
It'd be so fun.
let's
Please don't.
Panic, calling the hospital.
Brittany, for you, I won't. Thank you.
And that is my presentation. Oh, wait. Not quite. I have one last activity for you guys. I'm going to hand out the regions of Japan to you. And then once I passed out all of them, I would like you guys to come up and find the location of where this goes. And all the names of the regions are on the back of the sort of landmass, I guess. Let's see. Wes, do you need one? Randy needs one. He gets a Hoku. And I guess I will put up the last two. Did you get one, Sarah? Oh, not quite.
No, I took your instructions literally. Like, wait until everyone else gets one, then
I
go
do
up.
appreciate that. You're a good student.
I try. Once
Am I a good student?
No.
I'm not good at games like that.
Well, we'll figure it out. It's like a fun jigsaw puzzle. And then I'll explain quickly the regions of Japan as far as their location. Then I have the last two. Shihoku and Shokugo. And as I mentioned before, Hokkaido is this general region, and that's where Sapporo is, and that's the colder region of Japan. And then down here is, what region is this? This is Kyushu, and this is where Okinawa is located. These islands down here, this is just a magnified version of the islands of Okinawa. And those are the islands that are basically like the temperature of Florida year-round. So that is my presentation on Japan. I don't know if you guys finished your candles and want to come put one up in the floating river.
Is it okay that I didn't cut it out?
No, I didn't expect you guys to cut it out. It'll fit better, honestly, if you didn't.
Okay. Do I just like
Just
slip
slide
in
it right
there?
in, yeah.
Okay.
I wonder if I can actually find, I forget which book it's in, but there's a great picture of the candles floating down the river.
It's a really good idea. Because it's not taped on, it's just sitting there. Really good idea. They're not like taped on. You
It just looks
take
like
them
they're
back out.
floating down the river.
Yeah.
If you want to come and present your koi fish to the video, you totally can and should.
This is my fish. Here's mine.
Very beautiful koi fish, you guys.
Mine's the best. Here.
For the celebration of Children's Day, again the boys' holiday, which is on
Just because
May
you did it
5th.
two did not mean happy.
And here is mine.
Yeah. That's what's his birthday.
Thank you, Isabella.
Lily's birthday.
And I believe that is the conclusion of my presentation on Japan. Oh, I also have "We're excited" on the back of my poster, so all good there.